Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome back to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Jim?
Tyson, I'm good. I'm happy to be back in my regular video podcast studio and chat with you today. So,
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, when you travel or you're away and you're still doing a podcast, and it's never quite the same. It's when you're back in your own environment. It's just I don't know, everything just seems normal.
no, for sure. It's just nice to kind of be back. And yeah, it just feels like things are in place. I'm starting to kind of get unpacked and, get things set up in a way. So, yeah, hopefully everything is good with the new setup. Well, not the new old setup, I guess, but back to my desktop computer and, a light and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's always interesting to get back into the flow of things.
Okay, well, you're looking fantastic.
Well, thanks.
Okay, so what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today is we're going to jump into a little bit about reviews. I think, in the past, we've talked a lot about, different workflows, how to gather them up, what makes for a good review, what makes for a good reply. But, once you get those positive reviews, there's something that can be done about them. So we're going to dive a little more deeply into, once you get these positive reviews and you've replied to them, are there other ways you can help kind of amplify or get these reviews more visibility, especially obviously the really, really positive ones?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great topic because I know everybody wants more reviews, and I think if you're going to get them, you want to leverage them as much as you can.
Absolutely. I think it's not too dissimilar from, when we make this podcast, we need to turn it into like, snippet content. There's all kinds of things we can turn it into to make sure that people are aware of our podcast. The same thing goes for when you have great reviews. It's going to help amplify your trust. Like we talked in the past, people aren't going to your website to look at which residency you went to or which school you went to.
Yeah.
They really want to hear from other people about the way you took care of them. So, 90% of patients, read online reviews, before choosing a healthcare provider. You get those positive reviews. You really want to make sure that you're kind of making that local SEO impact because, a strong volume of positive reviews really can help your clinic, be more visible in that map hack and Google, show up better, as these AI chatbots and other things are kind of, moving in that direction. But, it's a really, really important thing that, along with, showing up in local SEO and ranking well, that you kind of have that emotional connection, right? When people take the time to write a paragraph about how great you are, if there's some ways that you can reuse that, it's going to be much better than you just talking about yourself. It's that kind of digital word of mouth, like we talked about in the past, where patients are going to trust other patients much more than you just kind of either advertising or boasting about how you're the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to foot and ankle stuff.
That's a great saying, that greatest things in sliced bread or legend in your own lunchtime. But,
Nice.
and if people don't believe this, if they're like, sitting on the fence, I don't know whether reviews are as important as what Jim's talking about. Just think of the last time you stayed at a hotel or you went to a restaurant. Did you look at the reviews to decide where you were going to go? And if there were two restaurants had the same menu, and one had 50 5-star reviews and the other one had no reviews, I know straight away which one most people would choose. You wouldn't risk it, but you wouldn't risk going to the other one when you've got all this positive information on the other side. So I think it works for podiatry exactly the same way.
No, it's a huge trust builder, right? Like you talked about, if there's a large number of views, like we talked about, if it's somewhere in the 4.7 or higher range, if it's 5.0, maybe people are going to be a little suspect, but in that 4.7 to 4.9, I'd say kind of like Goldilocks region. I think
Yeah.
that's super important. And like you said, the number of reviews is really gonna, and not just like great doc or 5-star and no review. It's like that written review is golden, and you can kind of utilize those written reviews in some ways to really kind of highlight it to your local community.
Yeah. And I've seen people use good reviews in their marketing. When they get a good review, they put it on Facebook, they put it on LinkedIn, they put it on the different social platforms, they add it to their website. And I've seen some of them even use it in like print advertising. You go on a magazine, they go, oh, here's a review that someone wrote. And you read through it, and it's a real person, and it sounds real. And it just, I don't know, builds credibility and trust.
No, absolutely. That kind of jumps into the first part is like, where can you showcase them? And the first most important part is on your website, right? So not just definitely starting by putting it on your homepage. If it's not above the fold when your website loads, maybe it's kind of in that middle section of your homepage. But, Also if you're running ads or if you're trying to get people to come to very specific pages on your website, having, either like a really long review from a patient. Obviously, you've had their permission or they left it on Google, but there's different kind of widgets you can put onto your website that look very professional. You can kind of, depending on the volume of reviews you're getting and the types of reviews you're getting, sometimes you can even narrow down to keywords. So let's say you have
Mm.
an ingrown toenail page and you have enough people mentioning in reviews that this doctor did a great job with my ingrown toenail. You could actually kind of, filter it down. So you're just kind of showing those specific types of reviews. So the more relevant and more specific the reviews you can show on your website, the more it's going to kind of build trust. I think the easiest platform to kind of display is usually from Google. They're going to tie into a lot of these widgets pretty easily. Some of the other smaller healthcare websites might be a little tougher, but I think it is really, really important that, like you said, if you can get these kind of service specific reviews on those service specific pages, it can have a really, really big impact.
But that is a great point. And I think it's something people don't realize. If somebody does say, "Oh, I got nail surgery done at this clinic and it was absolutely fantastic, highly recommend it," then that needs to be on your page where you're having grown toenails. Because I have seen some reviews where the most recent ones will just say, "Oh, the receptionist was really friendly and the clinic was welcoming." You go, well,
Right.
they're good. They're still good reviews. Keep your number up there. But if they're not talking about the podiatrist or a service, I think sometimes you got to try and encourage those.
No, I think it's kind of how you're asking for the review in the first place, right? If you had a great, result from this procedure, it'd be great if you wouldn't mind writing about it in a Google review. And if they say no, fine, fantastic. But if they are willing to, you've kind of led them down a path as far as what the expectation or what they can write about, right? You've helped them out in a way that will actually help you out down the road as well. Because, like you said, when you have those very specific reviews with the words in them, you put them on those service specific web pages. When people go look at your website for those types of services and they see someone that's had the exact same thing as they need to have done, and they've
Mm,
had a great result at your clinic, the conversion rates for those people is going to be much, much higher than, like you said, if, Sally at the front desk was amazing and you put that on the ingrown toenail page or the foot surgery page. Like that's a nice thing. It's a nice to have, but it doesn't really kind of seal the deal in the way that a really service specific review can do that. So, the more kind of social proof you can put onto your website, it's going to really help patients make these kind of booking decisions and see you as that expert that they want to book with.
So should a clinic, if they want to promote a particular service and they're doing that with certain patients and they're getting good results, they should then, it might be for that week or that month, put some focus into that particular service and just make sure anyone that's using that's your focus this month. We need to make sure patients are talking about this particular service, not just overall.
Yeah, like I said, like when you ask for the review, there's ways to kind of like facilitate, like, if you had a great procedure, it'd be great if you wouldn't mind sharing that. And then, like I said, there's some software that you can utilize that kind of like filters out. So let's say I want to have ingrown toenail stuff, right? There's certain widgets. If you say like, if the ingrown is mentioned or toenail is mentioned, in any review, please display those, right? If any 4-star or above or 5-star and above that uses the word ingrown toenail, they can kind of filter that out and then show those, maybe it's bunion surgery
Mm.
or bunion. So, there's ways of, I think you can do it with every patient. You don't necessarily need to like change your focus each week to like, let's try to get as many of these as possible. I think it is going to be helpful if you have a large number of views already. Someone that's just starting out in practice and has 7 or 8 reviews, it might take you a little while to build out that. But if you're a clinic that's been diligent about building, and it's never too early to start getting those more specific reviews, but the longer you've been asking in the right way, the more you're going to have these really service specific reviews that you'll be able to utilize in a much more effective way in your marketing.
Yeah, and I think it's habit forming. The more often I know some people will go, "Oh, I don't like asking for reviews. I feel uncomfortable." I think, but if someone's just said, "Hey, Jim, you're awesome," they've just told you they think you're awesome. Perfect time to ask for that review. But I also think the more reviews you write yourself, the more reviews you will get because you'll just be in that frame of mind of asking. And you know how good it feels when you write a review. So, try and make your patients feel good
Yeah.
by
And it's like,
helping them to write one.
And like we talked about, when someone lands on your homepage, they may not know who you are. They don't know you from another clinic down the road, but what are ways you can build trust with that potential patient? And obviously showing your credentials a little bit about the state association or the surgical association you're part of, but then it becomes to like they want to hear from other people about you. So if you can put that more front and center, either on your landing pages, on your home pages, in a way that connects those people, you're much more likely to build that trust. And then they'll go ahead and make an appointment with you.
Okay, what's next? What else do they need to do?
Yeah. So what else is next is that we talked about in the past that obviously your website's still kind of your home on the internet, but Google also has your Google business profile. And
Mm,
a lot of people look at your Google business profile and maybe the number of reviews, and they can click to make an appointment, either, click a link to make one on a website, or they can call directly from Google Business Profile. So it's really, really important that you're highlighting and utilize what's called Google Business Posts. So it's a form of kind of like, I wouldn't call it social media, but it's a way of kind of, you can put, there's different tools you're able to use. I use something called Gather Up to take a 5-star review and make it into a very interesting image. Something that has the stars on it, has the review, talks about how, it will kind of show in a graphic and kind of visually pleasing way that you are that local expert, that people have had a great experience with you. So you can make these kind of, you can export them as images, or you can, if you, some of the platforms allow you to post it directly to Google posts, also sometimes to your clinic's Facebook page. Maybe if you're on LinkedIn and doing it, you can do that as well. But these kind of social media snippets or these kind of images can be created that look very professional. And this is kind of, when you're trying to do things organically, but then
mm.
also you could potentially boost things up as well. You could use some paid ads, with these kind of graphics that you create, or the marketing provider that you're working with creates, to really kind of get more visibility for the great care you're providing. Because like we talked about in the past, social media organically, unless you have, 2 or 3 thousand people that like your clinic already, it's very, very hard to get visibility. Talking about 1 or 2% of your followers that are going to maybe see that. So sometimes boosting with some ads or some ad spend dollars behind it can be a good way to get more visibility locally. But just remember that, reviews aren't just for Google necessarily. Google Business Profile, your other social channels can really benefit from content that's about the great care you provide.
So that app you said you were using, you said Gather Up. Is it just spelled Gather Up, or has it got some fancy, funny
Yeah,
spelling?
so it's gatherup.com. It's what I utilize to kind of collect the reviews. The
Yeah.
clinics I work with is a software they use to collect the reviews and then respond to reviews. And then also, like I said, there's a section within that software where you can take, like, oh, I want to make a social post from this, and it does all the kind of heavy lifting for you. It's got your logo in there, your brand colors, and all that kind of stuff, and it'll spit out either an image file for you, or sometimes it can, if you've connected it to Facebook or to Instagram or other places, and go ahead and just do that for you through that software.
Yeah, and I think once you get these reviews too, is like you said, using them in your advertising, whether you're using it organically or paying for it. And even if you only have 20, you don't have to just post it once. You can do it time and time again, especially if it's a fantastic review.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do it.
For sure.
Okay. So what's next on your list?
Yeah, so we talked about the website, we talked about social and, Google Business Profile. The next spot to use them is within some other kind of patient communication, right? So, if you have a monthly or a quarterly patient newsletter, including one of these, reviews in there could be really, really helpful. Whether that's, like I said, something that was created in a software like GatherUp. Maybe you're at the point now where you're collecting kind of patient testimonials from a video standpoint. Something that you're adding to your patient newsletter can be very impactful, just to remind, patients who you are, what types of care you provide, and hear it not just from you, but also from patients, can be a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, and that will encourage patients if they read somebody else's review and say, "Well, I had a very similar experience," then that may encourage them to do a review as well.
No, absolutely. I think one of those things too, where, maybe you have a reactivation campaign as well. Maybe it's for orthotics or something like that, saying, you can provide some reviews about how someone really was impressed by the reconditioning or refabrication of an orthotic. I didn't realize that after 3 years how much I'd worn out my orthotics. But then, doc got me a new pair, and that's something maybe you can utilize in like a reactivation campaign that's a little bit more targeted if you have that permission from the patient to receive those kinds of emails as well. Can be really, really helpful.
One of the best reviews I got was just before I sold my clinic, and it's from a patient that I had been seeing 20 years. Met him at a networking event. I may have mentioned him on one of our previous episodes, and he just wrote this great review. He hadn't been in for a number of years. He came in to review his orthotics because he heard that I was selling the clinic, so he wanted to see me one more last time before he left. Anyway, did the review, looked at his orthotics were fine. He'd had a couple of pairs, so the ones that he brought in said, these are perfectly fine. I checked everything out. I would just keep using them. He wrote this glowing review that, hey, don't think that all health professionals are out there just to rip you off. He said, I hadn't seen these guys for a couple of years, went in with my orthotics. They reviewed them, looked at them, and said, I didn't need to replace them. And it was good to review the exercises that I went over. And so he's pretty much telling everybody, hey, you can see these guys, and just because you see them doesn't mean they're going to go and charge you another couple $100. They are actually an honest clinic to go to. And that is the type of one that you would use if you were doing recall letters, is putting that in your recalls and reactivations. So when people read that, they go, oh, so I'm not going to get new orthotics unless I need them.
No, exactly. You're going to take the time you need to make sure they actually need them. So I think that's a huge trust building piece. Like I said, that's a great example of a review that is going to build trust with those patients. It's not something you can necessarily, if it's coming from you, it's going to be a little bit different, heard a little bit differently.
Oh yeah, it's same. If I told someone Jim's a great guy, they'll go, oh yeah, okay. If you tell them Jim's a great guy, they go, well, Jim, you're not going to say you're not, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, just in case anyone's wondering, Jim's a great guy. Just in case you're wondering.
For sure.
So you don't have to say it yourself.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Tyson. No, we'll jump into the next part. I think that can be really helpful. Yeah. And I'm actually hearing this more and more from people I work with, is that people are looking into getting digital displays either in their waiting room or sometimes in their clinic rooms. And, maybe it's a written review, maybe it's a video testimonial, but I think priming people to show like how much they've enjoyed your care, or like the great results they receive from you, is a great way to kind of put patients in the right mindset. So whether it's digital screens, maybe it's putting reviews onto a poster, or or there's some kind of way that you're linking these things out. I think it can be a great way to display those reviews that you received. Like I said, maybe some of them led to testimonials that you can kind of put in more of a video context. But I think whether it be a video or written, in-clinic displays is another way to help kind of hammer home to the patient, either in a waiting room or even sometimes in your treatment rooms, that you do provide great care, and kind of showing that social proof, even outside of the internet, even in a physical location, can be a powerful thing.
Yeah, I like video reviews because, especially if they've done the video review very soon after actually having the treatment, that just video reviews in general, I think they come across as a bit more real, because you see the person, you see the expression on the face. Unless you're holding a gun to the head, that never looks good.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, what's next?
Yeah, I'll just say, and like kind of the key takeaway there is that, keep these reviews visible in physical locations as well. We talk a lot about, the newsletters is great. Sometimes the reactivation emails can be helpful, but keeping them, visible on those channels, but also physical places, is something that you really need to take into consideration. Because like I said, you spend all this time and effort, maybe you're having some software do it, you're working hard to get these reviews. So, don't take them for granted. I'd also say that
it's multiple things too. Like you said, you can have a review in the newsletter. It could also be written somewhere else. It could be in your clinic displayed, whether it's on an electronic board. So I think the more people see the different reviews, one, it reminds, it builds a trust, but also, like I said before, reminds them that they can actually do a review themselves.
No, exactly. And I think this kind of leads into the next kind of the final point of today's talk, is like more about, when you do have either milestones or kind of create these shareable moments, when you get that like long positive review, it's a great opportunity to, reach out to that patient potentially. And just, that's maybe a great patient to, like we talked about, turn that into more like a video testimonial. they're kind of putting their hand up and saying that I had a great experience with you. So, when patients do that, that's a great sign that maybe having them come back into the clinic, or at some point, maybe their next visit, setting up aside some time. Would you mind doing a video testimonial as well? You can also publicize things like, once you hit like 500 reviews or 1,000 reviews and you have a decent star rating, to kind of highlight that, right? If you're, 1,000 reviews and it's 2.3, maybe we don't do that, but
No,
it's okay to celebrate a little bit on, a social post, or maybe put out a press release in a way that maybe gathers a little bit of information or a little bit of notoriety about the great care you're providing. We talked about turning kind of patient reviews into testimonials or success stories that you can share on your website. You can share it through different types of advertising means. Those things can be really, really helpful. And when you make your reviews kind of part of your kind of clinic's kind of story and kind of the story of your brand, it's not just like some static thing that's living on Google. Like you talked about, people are going to be more receptive to when people are talking about it. They see a
mm,
human sitting there talking about how great you are, whether that's a video, maybe it's audio, if you're still into radio or some audio channels. But I think there's a lot of things that can be utilized for reviews that, it's great that you got it and it's living there on Google, but, working with someone that can help you take that next step to really, get that visibility for your clinic, because these patient reviews and the words they speak about how great you provide care is golden, and you shouldn't let those great opportunities to be visible to your local area and to patients that want to come into your clinic. You got to take advantage of these things.
yeah. Well, I think promoting the milestones, I love the 1,000 reviews. There'd be a lot of people listening to this go, yeah, well, when I hit our first 1,000 reviews,
We're working there. There's a couple of clinics that aren't too far away that I work with. So
I've seen a few that have got a couple of thousand reviews, and they're like sitting at 4.9, and whatever system they're using is obviously working. But I love the idea of celebrating those milestones. And they're important, because even with Google and on YouTube, when my YouTube channel hits a certain amount of subscribers, they send me something and go, hey, you should celebrate this. So, yeah, I think you should be proud if you're getting a certain numbers, be proud and actually display that.
absolutely, just taking time to celebrate it, to celebrate the clinic, celebrate kind of the great care that not only you but your staff is providing, and letting people know about it and letting it be visible to the public is super important, because we know what happens inside our clinics. We see those things every day. We know
Mhm.
all the care we provide, but we need to make sure that that word and the visibility is getting out to the general public and the people that could be your potential patients. And by kind of shining a light on the positive reviews you're receiving in some different ways, you're able to do that. And really, when you shine the light, it gives people an opportunity to connect with you and potentially make an appointment to come see you in clinic.
Yeah, I do recall, that was a while ago, somebody, a podiatrist I was talking to, and they said they had a patient come in. Oh, how'd you find out about us? And they said, well, actually, I had an appointment at a different podiatry clinic. They said, but I was scrolling, they were on Facebook or something like that. And they must have had a paid ad, because they saw one of their reviews pop up and they read it. And what they read was what they wanted help with. They then went to the other person's website to try to see if there were any reviews, and they couldn't find any reviews based on it. So they canceled that appointment and went with the person who was using that review as part of their marketing.
Wow.
So, people, it works.
Absolutely.
So, how are we going to wrap this episode up?
No, I mean, if people have questions, obviously, Tyson and I are available. If you go to podiatry.marketing, there's an area there. You can send us a message. What do you need help with? Anything else you want us to just, help you out in these reviews? Any ideas that you have? Maybe something's working in your practice you want to share with our massive audience of listeners. We're
Yep.
definitely always open to that. So,
And if you write a review for us, if you write a positive review for us, 5-star review for us, it's been scientifically proven that when you write one for us, for some reason, the review gods, you'll get 3 back from patients around the. I don't know how it works that way, but just test it out and prove me wrong.
absolutely.
Okay, Big Jim, anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, I think we're good, Tyson.
Okay, so everyone get out there, write reviews, you'll get more reviews. Okay, I'll talk to you next week, Jim.
All right. Bye now.
Okay, bye.